Well, our very special guest today, a longtime friend of this show from back when it was an even tinier podcast in 2021, Professor Joe Siracusa. Professor Siracusa is the Dean of Global Futures in the Faculty of Humanities at Perth's Curtin University. An American-Australian, he's a leading expert in American politics, foreign policy and international security. He's authored and co-authored over 30 books, one of which was nominated for the Pulitzer Prize in History. Professor Siracusa is a regular commentator in the media in Australia and globally, and it is great to have him with us again. Joe, thanks so much for your time and for joining us on the other side. It's great to see you again.
My pleasure, Damian. My pleasure.
Joe, we've just had Super Tuesday this week. Now, for people who don't sort of get American politics, that's the day when 15 states in the US all simultaneously have votes called primaries, and then they have caucuses, some of them of the political party members, just to decide who's going to be the presidential candidates for each party in the 2024 November elections. And Donald Trump absolutely romped it in, annihilating the last contender that's standing against him, Nikki Haley. He will be the candidate for the Republican Party in November, Joe, unless the powers that be manage to put him in jail or something. What do you think the chances of that happening are now?
Well, Damian, even if they put him in jail, he can still run for president. There's no restrictions on the American Constitution to keep him from doing that. Look, there are two things I can say about Donald Trump today. Number one, he's back and he's the odds-on favorite to become the president of the United States in the general election in November. This is one of the great comebacks. You know, Damian, we all like a comeback story. That's why we like the Rocky movies, things like that. I mean, they're terrible movies, but we love it. We love a comeback story, and so do Australians. This guy, he gets elected president from his television. You know, his only public services that showed The Apprentice. He was on it for 10 years, producer for 2 years. He becomes president of the United States. And then, you know, he's just in office for a few minutes, and then he gets investigated by the FBI, and he survives the Mueller report. And then he survives the change of vote in the House of Representatives. I mean, as soon as you get to 218, you can impeach anybody you want. So he gets impeached once, and then he gets impeached twice. And then he gets accused of an insurrection. And let me tell you, when I went to university in the 60s, I can tell you what an insurrection was. My generation burned 25 cities between 1965 and 1968. Now, that was an insurrection. So anyway, this guy's come back from all these law cases. Trump seems to me to be unsinkable. And he's...
well, the more they throw at him, Joe, the more they throw at him, the stronger he gets. It's a classic case of do they not realize that they're just strengthening him and his narrative?
He's made history. He's won the primary 3 times in a row. And he represents, a lot of average Americans. You know, they're not all left or right or blue or red. You know, he represents a lot of people who are struggling. As Bernie Sanders likes to point out, 90% of Americans, probably like Australians, live on their paychecks from week to week. So when inflation gets to be too much, and there is terrible inflation in America, and when you start to have these the cost of increases for your mortgage, your rent, and the rest of it, a lot of Americans are struggling.
So Joe, what about Joe Biden? I mean, can he beat Joe Biden? I mean, it's a very different story when you're out there with the whole electorate.
I've been looking at all the polls, and they call these the binary polls, you know, when you put the two of them together. The New York Times, Siena poll, the Gallup poll, CBS, everybody this week says that Trump could beat Biden tomorrow in an election by 5 percentage points. Okay. So, yeah, I think he's going to beat him. And, of course, President Biden's got his own woes. He's going down the...
Well, that's going to be my next question. Is it going to be Biden?
Well, I have a great interest in Joe Biden's career, Damian. And then I'm going to tell you something I haven't talked about in my hundreds of interviews in the last couple of years. Joe Biden and I are the same age. I started working at the University of Queensland as a young man in 1973, and he showed up in the U.S. Senate. You know, I work 15 hours a day. I'm just producing my 50th book in June, as a matter of fact.
Well, you're definitely in a lot better shape than Joe Biden, I've got to say that. But do you think if it's not Biden, who it might be? Have they got anybody else?
Well, they do. It's called the Vice President, Kamla Harris. She's been given some things to do in the last couple of years. One of them was she was tasked with dealing with the American border in the Southwest. She hasn't done a very good job there. In fact, she only found the place once or twice. And Joe Biden has aged very, very badly in office. And now he's shuffling across the stage. He can't remember the words. And it's quite clear to me that he has onset dementia or something very close to that. And frankly, I'm ashamed of the Democratic Party for allowing him to go on in this state. I mean, I think, his attempt to bring calm to the world has brought just the opposite. He kept telling people in Europe and Asia that America is back. Well, actually, America is more chaotic now than it was 4 years ago. He wasn't able to do that. And to be fair to the man, I don't think he can do that. And my God, Damian, is he the guy you want to, is he fit to receive a phone call at 3 a.m. about a nuclear launch? I don't think so. I mean, I think it's scary.
But is Kamala Harris a viable alternative, Joe? I mean, Kamala Harris is a pretty poor performer, really. She doesn't come across as somebody with a lot of depth. She's not that likable.
She looked pretty good in the beginning. She ticked all the boxes. She was a prosecutor and all that kind of stuff. Look, I'm sure she's got many, many fine qualities, Damian. I just haven't seen them yet. I don't think Kamala Harris can beat a dog catcher right now. I mean, her electability as president is just about zero. She can't beat anybody. So the Democrats are in a tough spot. They got a president who's about ready to fall off the tree, and they got a vice president who can't beat anybody.
Could they just bring in a star from the outside? Could they bring in, Michelle Obama, Oprah Winfrey? I don't know.
Michelle Obama would be a pretty good bet, but she's not going to jump on the Democratic hierarchy and break it up. Governor Newsom would have a better chance of beating Trump, I suppose. A very good-looking politician in California with the perfect family and the perfect background and all that. Now, what the Democrats are doing is holding out that President Biden will be able to run from office without too many debates or going into public too often. Frankly, to keep a man in office, to keep a man in a job that he's no longer fit for through no fault of his own, it's got a name, Damian. It's called elder abuse. These people who are keeping him in place are criminally negligent, for God's sakes. And what I mean by that is because the president makes poor decisions, people die. I'm talking about he personally took control of the Kabul exit, and people die. He took control of the Ukrainian war. People have died. And he's screwed up very badly in the Middle East, where American foreign policy is stuck, and the great affection for the state of Israel is falling apart there. So,
yeah, it's sad, and I think Donald Trump is going to be pretty safe in getting into the presidency.